Have you met any person in the ministry who have found themselves stressed out or burned out? And the reason why this happens, in the world or even in ministry. Well, I'll say in ministry because I'm talking for the Christian viewpoint. This burnout is a result of either carrying a load of God, a load that God has intended for us, or us taking on task, including the ministry that God did not call us to do. We see that a lot. We see a lot of Christians so burnt out, and it's because God never called us to do this situation. He never called us to make this ministry or to do this task. Whatever task God gives us, He does the task through us. It's His power and His might and His strength. The life of ministry, people, is not. It does not always include religious tasks. It is often doing things in love. Things that we love to do. You know, whether it may be basketball, you may be a basketball player, you may be a gymnast, you may be a saxophone player, so your ministry, that is your ministry that God gives you, so while using the activities of life in such a way that gives us an opportunity to witness to others and show how faith fulfills our lives. Our circle of influence from daily life is a very rich mission field. So don't burden yourself trying to do something God has not called you to do. You may have been in many churches and they say, oh, God told us to do this ministry, and God told us to do this ministry, and God told us to do this ministry, and 5 years later that ministry haven't taken off, and people are burnt out trying to do things in this ministry. And it's because, for one, God did not tell them to do that ministry. And another thing is they're doing it. They're doing it instead of letting God work through them. So don't burden yourself trying to do something that God has not called you to do. And don't try to force success when God has not yet opened the door. Okay? God knows when to open the door. He knows when to open the door so you can walk through it. He's not going to open the door for you to fail. Okay, we fail because we open the door ourselves and walk on through before God tells us to go through, or because God never told us to go through the door in the first place. Okay, so if our service for God is a heavy burden, guess what? We're not serving God. For Jesus promised that our burden would be light. So sometimes the call for good works begin with stepping back and seeking God first. There has never been a man or woman that walked in communion with God that did not fulfill their ministry. Okay, so as we grow into maturity, the right kind of desires will emerge, and God will bring opportunities into our paths. God will not forget us. He will not forget you. He will not forget me. God will not allow our circumstances to prevent us from discovering the path of His plan He has for us. When the road is blocked and the way is impossible, we rest. We rest in Christ, okay? There's a roadblock, but it's God's job to open the door that no man can shut. That's okay if it's a roadblock. It's not going to be there forever. God may need you to rest because you're probably starting to work in your power, starting to go forth in your power instead of letting God do it. And then other times, remember, we do have an enemy, who will throw roadblocks at us, but that's okay. We're going to go forth when God tells us to go forth. But it all stems with communion, being in daily communion with God. So for us Christians, as we grow in maturity, the right kind of desires will emerge, and God will bring opportunities into our path. God will not forget us. Okay, like I said, He will not forget us. But let's understand this. God will have little difficulty keeping everything in our life on the right path. Sometimes we have to wait on Him to guide us to the right opportunities that He planned for you and I before we were born. God planned your future before you and I were ever born, okay? A lot of Christians swap God's plans with their own efforts, instead of seeking to establish their heart in the Lord. They seek to establish their ministries for the Lord. Yet, ministry without working of the Spirit within us is human effort. While we're busy with our self purpose, God's purpose for us remains uncovered. Our plans often become distractions that draw us away from God's purpose, which is always better. You know, His purpose is better. Okay, it's always better. So when our heart is secure in the fellowship with the Lord, we will have discernment to recognize God's purpose when He leads us to it. Okay, so if you're busy for God, that the relationship is weak and non-existent, emotions, guilt, and opinions of others will be the driving force for your ministry and will lead you astray. God doesn't honor our works, but His works. The works He put in you is the works that He honor. He don't honor our self-effort. Okay, I hope this blesses you. Have a great day. Amen.